Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. Two well-known guitarists in ear-splitting silence. I would like to inform you that two of the greatest rock guitarists in history have never acknowledged one another's genius. Rock music has been transformed by Jimmy Page, the lead guitarist for Led Zeppelin, and Ritchie Blackmore, the fire-fingered founder of Smoke on the Water. However, the horrifying reality that has been concealed for decades is revealed here. Even though they share a similar musical realm, Page has never once cited Blackmore's as an inspiration in any of his public appearances. This is because the response exposes a negative aspect of the music business that will permanently change how you view your rock heroes. Let's learn more about these two titans before we begin this epic story of enmity. You know, Jimmy Page, who was born in Stan, England in 1944, wasn't always the guitar guru. He began his career as a humble, unassuming session guitarist who contributed to more successful albums than you can name. He had really contributed to more recordings by the time he was 22 than most guitarists do in their lifetimes. Even before most people recognized his name, Page's guitar work helped form the sound of the British invasion, from the Kinks to the Who's, but he had a deep desire for more. Nobody could have foreseen that he would transform the rock genre when he joined the Yardbirds in 1966. Thanks to Page's creative methods, which pushed boundaries no one knew existed, Led Zeppelin burst onto the scene 2 years later like nothing the world had ever heard. However, another guitar virtuoso was establishing his own history across town. When his father gave him his first guitar at age 11, Ritchie Blackmore, who was born in 1945 in Weston-super-Mare, was the rebel who defied authority. Although classical music wasn't exactly what he had in mind, the young Ritchie was made to study classical technique with the most rigorous teachers in his area. This training would later make his rock solos unique and nearly impossible to imitate while working as a session musician with Page. Blackmore has a reputation for being intelligent, challenging, and hard-working. He played with everyone from Joe Cocker to Tom Jones throughout his session work, but when he co-founded Deep Purple in 1968, he always added a distinctive edge with a classical touch to every recording. Everything was altered. After the band saw a fire at the Monte Cassino during Frank Zappa's performance, his riffs became legendary, particularly the famous Smoke on the Water, which is possibly the most well-known guitar riff ever recorded. This is where things start to become strange during the 1970s. In hundreds of interviews, Page never once brought up Blackmore's influence or talent, despite the fact that both guitarists played with similar bands, influenced similar genres, and even crossed paths several times at festivals and studio sessions. They also shared producers, studios, and even some session musicians. Consider that for a moment. Two of the best guitarists of their day are shown performing in similar settings, but one of them won't admit the other exists. This silence says more than any critique could, but the explanation is nuanced and reveals disturbing facts about the inner workings of the music industry. Blackmore was frank when questioned about other guitarists, even disparaging Page's improvisational skills, at one point claiming that he couldn't improvise his way out of a paper bag. Additionally, he never played the political games required to survive in the 1970s music business. Blackmore openly attacked Clapton, Beck, Page, and even his own bandmates in a 1976 interview with Guitar Player magazine, declaring, "I don't care about being liked, I care about playing what feels right." He was an outlier in a field that prized conformity just as much as talent because of this candor. Allow me to share with you the occasion when Blackmore really blew his bridges with the rock establishment. He became the most notorious lone wolf in rock because of this mindset. Page became well known as the industry darling, praised by peers and reviewers alike. He played the role of the appreciative rock star, went on award shows, and gave interviews admiring other guitarists. Blackmore was pushed more to the fringes of the industry, the more he disobeyed the establishment. Most people don't realize, though, that this involved more than just personalities clashing. Page made sure to acknowledge other guitarists like Clapton and Beck as Led Zeppelin was growing, ensuring positive press attention and industry backing. To create positive news possibilities, record label executives would arrange for artists to meet. The foundation of the music industry in the 1970s was a sophisticated network of partnerships and reciprocal advertising that functioned as a fraternity. Think about this amazing fact. Blackmore narrowly reached the top 50 when Rolling Stone magazine published their list of the 100 greatest guitarists in 2003, ranking at number 55. This had more to do with politics and recognition than skill. Blackmore was essentially shut out of the rock aristocracy because he refused to take part in this system. Blackmore's management once revealed that he rejected multiple chances to work with other well-known guitarists because he believed it would sell out. Page, ranked 9th, has received recognition from every Hall of Fame imaginable. The irony that ought to cause all rock fans to take note is that Eric Clapton was ranked number 4 on the same list. Although many musicians and observers secretly agreed that Blackmore was more technically proficient than most of his contemporaries, the quiet around his brilliance became a self-fulfilling prophecy. He was remembered less, the less he was acknowledged in popular circles. You are always listening to Blackmore's legacy whenever you hear a neoclassical metal shred. His rock and classical approach changed the way guitar solos were composed, and his abilities are evident in all modern rock music. His distinctive finger technique of combining blues-based pentatonic runs with classical arpeggios and using harmonic minor scales became the foundation of an entire genre. Permit me to share a personal story that illustrates this. Steve V freely stated that Blackmore was the founder of all the techniques that have influenced contemporary rock guitar playing when I questioned him about his influences in a magazine interview. Similarly, Yngwie Malmsteen asserted that Blackmore was 20 years ahead of me in what I am doing. However, Blackmore is not featured in the majority of Guitar Hero documentaries. It appears that his name has been deliberately omitted from rock history. Blackmore's transition to folk music with Blackmore's Night in the 1990s was ridiculed by the rock establishment, but he never gave a damn about their opinion. He previously remarked, "I play for myself and the people who understand what I'm doing, not for critics or other musicians." Alright, this is the part that should make you furious. Not only is Page's silence about Blackmore personal, but it also symbolizes the tea industry's readiness to exclude people who don't follow its standards. Our understanding of rock history has been influenced by this selective awareness. Blackmore's inventions were deliberately disregarded by the system that praised Page's every move when Marshall Amplification developed their signature artist line. Wal Blackmore, who had used Marshall amplifiers throughout his career, was glaringly missing from the lineup when Page received his own type. When asked about Blackmore in a recent Guitar World interview, the silence has grown even more acerbic. In 2018, Page deftly shifted the subject to talk about vintage amplifiers. This was about who gets to write rock history, not simply about two guitarists. This deliberate absence speaks a lot about the unwritten guidelines of rock stardom. Playing the game is also necessary, otherwise Blackmore wouldn't even understand the rules. Being good isn't enough. Let's talk about what this implies for you and other music enthusiasts. Led Zeppelin's music is unquestionably among the greatest rock songs ever produced, but Deep Purple and Rainbow offer equally groundbreaking music that has never received enough credit. The way the music was promoted to you, not the caliber of the song, made the difference. Blackmore's treatment by the industry altered how upcoming musicians view their careers. Today's artists discover early on that having skill alone is insufficient. You also need the right people, the appropriate mindset, and the proper public relations team. Blackmore's career should serve as a cautionary tale for anyone who would put industry politics ahead of artistic integrity. As this narrative draws to a close, consider the musicians who have identified Blackmore as their primary inspiration. Yngwie Brian Smith Malmsteen, a dream. An alternative, one distinct history of rock, exemplified by Randy Rouse and countless others, places more emphasis on technical mastery than celebrity culture. The music industry's power to influence perception and legacy is symbolized by Page and Blackmore's silence, which goes beyond their personal conflict. You have control over music history itself when you decide who gets acknowledged. Challenges of hidden lineage. The official story that has been presented to us for many years. Because more defied This system, even if it meant not getting the acclaim he earned, he is the prototypical rock rebel. This is the lesson that will last. The next time you appreciate rock music, consider who decided which performers became legends and which became footnotes. Regardless of whether Ritchie Blackmore's name appears in trade journals, his guitar still burns with the same intensity as before. Back then, his music didn't require approval, and it doesn't anymore. Rather, it requires listeners who can see through the story's politics to the song's essence. Remember that the most significant musical revolutions usually take place in silence. The next time you hear the opening riff of Smoke on the Waters or the haunting opener to Rainbow Eyes, keep in mind that Blackmore revolutionized guitar playing without Page's consent. All he needed was his instrument, his vision, and the courage to remain true to himself, while everyone else attempted to forget him. Remember that you were listening to the works of a man who valued integrity above celebrity politics and music over money. After all, isn't that what rock and roll was all about? Silence cannot lessen the impact of his legacy.